Have you ever felt that you had a bad relationship with your finances? Perhaps you find it hard to talk about money with anyone, much less with yourself. Have you ever noticed that you put off paying bills or perhaps try to avoid them? Have you noticed yourself not allowing yourself to spend money on yourself? Maybe not getting the regular weekly hairdos at the beauty salon or the bi-weekly pedicure and mani. And sometimes you may say to yourself, no, it's because I didn't hit my financial goals in my business this month. Have you ever wondered what is the difference between financial trauma, financial anxiety, and financial stress? Well, today we're going to talk about all of that in the most loving and careful way because I want to make sure that you stay present for yourself and also that we don't make our nervous system feel uncomfortable because the intention here today is for us to feel comfortable and have a conversation. So if you don't know me by now, I'm Evie Diaz of evdiaz.com with the simplest method of manifesting money and becoming financially free. And that is the FAB money scripting method. And I'm a financial empowerment speaker and a neurosomatic coach for small business women who want to go from not feeling comfortable asking for the sale or asking for the amount of money that they truly know in their heart that they deserve to feeling not just confident, but being totally sure that what they have is worthy of getting compensation for because they know that they have a solution that will help the person that they're selling that to. So today I decided to name this differently because this is going to be a series that I am doing as a precursor to my PhD dissertation, in which I'm going to talk about healing financial trauma, anxiety, and stress. And for today, I decided to name this How to Manifest More Money Faster by Healing Financial Trauma. Because the truth is that we all are manifestors and we are all abundant. What do you think about that? We're all abundant. Yeah. It's like easier said sometimes than felt, right? So we're going to talk about how do we unlock that abundance within us to transform our relationship with financial abundance. And this is really the beginning of something that we're going to probably be talking about for a while until I start really seeing more and more of us feeling healed and feeling totally different about how do we ask for money? How do we receive money? Because ultimately, that's what we want to do. We want to feel good about giving and receiving money. And so, over the next 60 minutes or so, I am going to help you to really understand how, by healing, you're going to be manifesting faster and ultimately becoming your financially free fatpreneur future self, which is, by the way, who you're meant to be. And you'll also learn about the FAB money scripting method. So, as always, I never believe that we're here by accident, whether you are here with me today, which I appreciate you. And I was going to do this even for a recording like people do on YouTube when there's no one there. But it's so great to feel the energy of others around me. So I'm grateful. And for those of you that are watching on the replay, understand that there is no coincidence, and this is a divine incident. And so, if you are a passionate, heart centered female entrepreneur, then this message is for you. Now, I want to begin by saying that I believe that thought based manifestation is incomplete without emotional alignment. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the notion that you can just focus on a conscious level of this think and grow rich is incomplete. And this is really what my master thesis is all about. And I believe there's a limited integration of the body and the nervous system when we focus on just the conscious mind. So I believe that ultimately financial abundance emerges from not becoming someone new, as we might think, taking on a whole new different identity and personality, which you can, but rather realigning with your inherent inner nature, which I believe is truly abundant, because we were and are abundant from birth. So abundance is our birthright. Now, you might not have noticed, but I'm more convinced of that than ever since almost being at the end of finishing, thankfully, my master thesis, because I had to read so many books to really research this idea. So I believe that we as women reconnect with our internal truth, and we can release that old conditioned identity rooted in limitation and lack and begin to release it so that we can make space for the experience of abundance as our natural state of being. In other words, I want you to take a breath right now and release out. And I want you to anchor that breath and know that just as you breathe and have the breath of life, you have abundance. You are abundant. You are abundance. And when you forget, I'm going to encourage you to breathe in as your truth for 3 seconds. Breathe that in as your truth. I am abundant. I feel abundant. I am abundance. And then release any limitation that may come up. And you may have to make that outer breath from your mouth go longer so that you can release and really believe that as your true state. And then also when you're outside, or perhaps when you have a little fan and you feel air, that you remember that financial abundance and abundance of every sort is as available to you as air. Can you do that? Can you remember that? Whether you're feeling it when you bring down the window in your car, open up your windows in your house, or have a little fan, feel that and remember that. So today I'm going to show you some new concepts perhaps for you, and some concepts that we really need to explore to understand what's happening with our money relationship. And the three concepts that I hope to clearly define and help you differentiate are financial trauma, financial anxiety, and financial stress. Now let's begin with the first one. um, well, not yet. And of course, I'm going to show you how you can integrate the FAB money scripting method to heal you from any of those or all of those if you choose. And that's using not just the FAB money scripting method, which is, by the way, a neuroscience somatic based uh, method and framework that I developed to help you manifest money and become financially free, and also something that I'm now calling FTT, which is financial trauma technique. And once again, it does bring the neuroscience and the somatics into it, because I'm a believer that this is not just happening here at the subconscious level where we want to reprogram the subconscious or rewire our brain through neuroplasticity, but also here in our hearts and in our bodies. And I know this for sure because I have experienced many somatic problems as a result of having financial trauma. Like, for example, for years, I wonder why I was experiencing so many problems in my gut. And it wasn't just from food, as I still realize there is a component of food that, yes, makes me feel sick. Um, it is also the nervous system reaction to different money situations. Now, as I say this, very soon, hopefully by Moneyfest, I'll be launching the certification in this program that will be available for anyone who works in as a social worker, psychologist, or maybe as a financial planner, accountant, or any of those fields that you want to get into this work and promote this for yourself, and kind of like a partnership where you're licensed with everything that I've created. So first and foremost, I want you to feel safe. So whether it be breathing or breathing and doing the havening technique, which you don't, if you don't know by now, this is a technique developed by two brothers. It's kind of almost like hugging that releases oxytocin. But what we want to do is to release a little bit of that stress cortisol and kind of get us present. Which, by the way, there is no better way for us to do that, if you were wondering, than to breathe and be breathing to really help us. Because most of the time, we're not breathing. Like if you're doing a presentation and you're not breathing, breathe. If you're in a conversation, in a sales presentation one on one, and you're playing double dutch, like you're waiting for the person to say their objection or their concern, and you're like, okay, as soon as they stop, I'm going to jump in and start. This reminds me of my childhood time years. So we don't want to do that. Instead, we want to breathe. We want to breathe, and we want to breathe to feel safe, to make others feel safe, and to let our brain know that it's okay, that you can share what you're about to sell. It's all good. Okay. And so I'm going to invite you to set an intention, and we're going to do it. If you feel comfortable, we'll do some rounds of breathing in through our nostrils, out from our mouth. And the best breath, which I have had difficulty integrating into my life, is like a belly breath where we feel our belly, and you see our belly going up when we're breathing in through our nose. So let's try that, and then exhale for as long as you need to. And then, of course, anytime throughout that you feel like you're either falling asleep or you're saying, oh, I already know this, or this doesn't apply to me, or whatever, breathe. And also, you could practice the havening technique and just breathe in and out as you calm yourself and your monkey mind, which I think by now you know what that means, the monkey mind that's always going, right? So, by the end of our conversation, if it feels aligned, I will share the opportunity for you to work and research this with me through my PhD dissertation starting in June. And you can let me know of your interest simply by emailing me at evie@evds.com and letting me know that you are interested in going deep into this to heal this situation with money that you have been faced with. So by now, of course, you know that this is where I was born. And this is why I reference double Dutch, because this picture is really a reminder of that. And so I was born in poverty. And yes, I've said it before, I love that awesome government cheese. And this is where I live now. And I love it. And lately, you might have seen on Instagram that our HOA finally used the we collected like $5 million to do our seawall, and now we have a walkway, so it makes it look like a park. And I've been walking, and so I sit there and look at Golden Beach. This is Golden Beach, my view across the water, and I call these my across the water neighbors. This one is actually, the boat's not there for the first time in like almost 20 years. They've taken off and they're not back yet. But that huge yacht is usually there. But in any event, I digress. And my intention, and I'm going to share with you my intention of my future home, because it is good for you to do that, by the way. Feel confident. The more that you share it with other people, especially in our community, I'm actually, and please remind me, I'm going to do a post that I'm going to ask people to share their intention over the next month, next 12 weeks, and by the end of the year. And by the end of the year, I hope to be in the Carolinas. So this is my intention, having a home by a different type of water, now a lake, and still having a view like right behind me overlooking the ocean. So let's begin with what are you grateful for? For this recording, I'm going to say, please type it in the chat. What are you grateful for? And wherever you see this video, I'm going to ask you to say what you're grateful for. And by the way, in our community of money manifesting women, I want you to remind me to ask every day, what are we grateful for? Because one of the easiest and fastest way to elevate our energy is to feel gratitude. So we should begin by feeling gratitude. Right now, of course, Janet, I am totally grateful for you. If you were near me, I would hold you tightly and give you a massive hug and kisses because I am very grateful for your presence. And for me, that is a gift. So go ahead and type in the chat what you're grateful for. And that is the chat, whether you're watching the replay or you here right now. Type what you're grateful for. Of course, I already said I was grateful for Janet, who's a VIP member of our community, who you should connect with because she is definitely a person that's filled with wisdom and a big heart. She loves to help people. So you definitely want to connect with Janet in our community. And of course, I'm grateful for all of you who take the time to give me a 5-star review in our EVDS speaker author Google page where other people find me and can look into this work. And this is the way we spread the good message for everyone who's out there looking. And of course, go ahead and tell me right there in the chat, what's your intention over the next month, over the next 12 weeks, or before the end of the year, whatever feels most comfortable, or all three, because it's actually even better if you set an intention like that. We're entering into a new month. This month is not over. This, I declare, was our money manifesting month, and we still have a few weeks, a few days. So go ahead and say it, declare it. May I manifest money in May. That was the intention. And of course, June 1st, I hop right into writing my PhD dissertation for my doctorate degree. So go ahead and do that there. And these are some other personal intentions. So let's begin with talking about identifying our money patterns. Now, in the FAB money scripting method, it is primarily a writing method that nowadays some cognitive psychologists are using to help clients to process while they're not in session, while they're away. I know for some of my clients that are psychologists in private practice, I've really been trying to push them to go into this because they have known it for themselves how helpful it has been in their private practice to really grow their private practice and make more money by using this certain way, if I want to use Waddle's terminology from the Science of Getting Rich, because he said there's a certain way, and there is a certain way, and it's a strategy, it's a method, and we call it here the FAB money scripting method. And for awareness, journaling, the traditional way is very good. So awareness is the first step. And this is so important. Today, I didn't ask for permission. Someone sent me a really nice email, and I wrote her back about how she's had this awareness, this little light up, where she's understanding now the identity of the financially free fatpreneur. And I wrote her a big email back. I forgot to ask her if I can tell her story, but maybe next time I will, and then I can share the great email that I received. And so here's the question, and I want you to answer that in the chat, and I'm going to look at the chat now. And I'm going to look at the chat when I place this inside of the community. Number one, do you undercharge? Yes or no? If you do, put the word undercharge there. I have undercharged for a long time. As a matter of fact, when I began this course, it began for, I don't know, that I could remember was $397 for the 90 days. $397, that's $397. I was definitely undercharging. So I'm going to confess, and I often confess. And that was me. I was undercharging. So why do we undercharge? We undercharge for many reasons, and we're going to explore that right now. Do you avoid sales? Oh my goodness. Have I avoided sales? Oh my goodness. I have avoided sales. And yet, I've done mostly marketing and sales my entire life. I started selling perfume door to door with my aunt when I was 12 years old. I would go with her and sell. So something happened between being 12 and adulthood that I started avoiding sale. And here's a good one. Do you feel stressed when dealing with money? I certainly have felt a lot of stress in dealing with money. So, do you procrastinate? Do you overwork? Do you avoid? Do you under earn? If you do, type the word that really relates or you can feel most. That is the word that really defines you. Is it procrastinate? I don't procrastinate. That's one thing I don't do. Overwork, for sure. Avoid, for sure. Under earn, certainly have. Okay. So, our nervous system responds in four different ways. Have you heard of these before? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Have you heard this? Good. I like that. I like what you put there. I like that. That gets me excited. Awesome. So, we're going to discuss these. So, these are trauma responses, and they frequently manifest in our financial habits as subconscious survival mechanisms driven by scarcity, anxiety, or past financial stress. And we're going to look at each of these, the four F's. Fight. The fight refers to wanting to be in control. So we want to control and or attack. We're going to see more about this in just a second. Flight, we want to avoid it. So if you wrote avoided, you're in a flight response, right? The next one, freeze. This is an immobilization response. So, like the word depicts, freeze, we freeze, okay? And this one, which is one of the most interesting terms, fawn, it relates to people pleasing. But let's break them down so we can understand it. Financial response could show up as lashing out, becoming combative, okay, or perhaps aggressively justifying or fighting for something. So I want you to remember perhaps the last time when you had this type of financial fight response. And I'll tell you, when I was writing this, and this is from Catherine Morgan, where I found these particular samples, it made me think of a cousin of mine that I've gone shopping with. And I used to tell her, wow, I admire how you do that. And when I was writing this, I realized she was having a financial fight response. So this is a cousin of mine, and I'm going to recall when I was getting married in 2021, I had to buy a lot of different things for my wedding. And everywhere she went, she would haggle, like at the mall, in a boutique. I've never seen this. I've never been aware that you can even do that everywhere. And I was like, wow. And she was like fighting, and she would get people to give her a discount. And I said, wow, I admire that in you, I would say. Now I realize that that is a financial fight response that she was having. She was really like, like fighting, like I deserve that. The other one is the financial flight response. So the flight response is aggressive, defensive. It's used to regain control over a stressful situation. So without showing you, because I'm not going to show you every PowerPoint, because that way we could just have a kind of like a conversation. I have experienced this both as a buyer and as a seller. Not so much as a seller, but I have done it. As I was writing this and I'm thinking about it, I know. So think about it. Have you ever had to flight, meaning take off, because you're like, no, I can't deal with this. Like, I'm going to buy this. It could be whatever. Let's say you really need a pair of shoes, or clothes because you got to go somewhere, right? And you go to many stores and you know that you need these for tomorrow, for whatever it is, right? And you just decide to say, avoid it because you can't deal with that. You can't get what you want because you don't have the amount of money. Or it could also show, of course, financial flight, not paying bills. I've done that too. Like, I was like, I'm going to avoid it. Not so much not paying bill, but waiting to look at the bill. Okay. Because I've never not been like not paying bills, but avoiding it. Okay. So sometimes this could be in a partnership, business or love partnership, where you may be talking to your spouse or significant other and you change the conversation to avoid talking about money. Let's say your spouse bought something that you thought was expensive or that they shouldn't have bought, that this was not the right time. So that's the flight response that we're taking on. Are you starting to see the difference on these things? Okay. It's very important that we understand because what happens is these actually show up more often than we even realize it. And that's the problem. We don't realize that they're showing up, but they do. And now I lost my place. Give me a second. So they show up, and the problem is that we respond very differently depending on where we are. Oh, here I am. Okay. What about the freeze response? What do you think that is? The financial freeze. So let's say that you want to invest in something, either like a new website, a new lead capture page, like the ones that you create, Janet, a new program. Let's say you want to come into my program, right? And you want it, but instead you get into your monkey mind and you go into a decision paralysis. You freeze, you get paralyzed, right? And it also shows up when we're refusing to spend in things that are necessary. For example, and I'm going to confess again, um, my husband and I had to have a health thing that had to be taken care of, and it was extremely expensive because we don't have the best insurance, unfortunately, and we have to pay a lot out of pocket. And we didn't have it. We didn't do it. We didn't go forward with that. We are going to do it, by the way, but we didn't. And it has some really bad repercussions, right? Well, that came from a type of deprivation spending. Oh, the healthcare cost. And by the way, a lot of people do this. A lot of people. I would say in healthcare, probably a lot, like you say, oh, I have money either to pay the mortgage or to pay my out of pocket healthcare expense, right? So that could be how that shows. And then the final, which is the interesting one, the fawn. The fawn response is a deep people pleasing strategy where an individual uses money to appease others, smooth or conflict, or secure relationships. I don't know. What do you think? How do you think that shows up? If you want to unmute yourself if you want. How do you think that one comes up? Because I have a great example that we have all done for this weird fawn. People always ask me, what does that mean, fawn? The word. Well, while you think, I'm going to show you if you don't want to share. Do you have any idea, Janet? People who might buy a gift. Could be
Yeah.
premature discounting. So here's the deal. And I'm going to tell you a great story that you can relate to, Janet. When I had my marketing agency, I stopped doing like any one on one. No, I would send them a pre-qual form. They'd have to fill it out. And then I would say, for this session, for this consult, because I didn't call them sessions in marketing, consult, it's a consult. I would tell people, I'm going to ask you to give me a deposit, right? And then you can use the deposit for future work. But I used to say that in advance. Like I wouldn't say, I could just say, I'm going to charge you a deposit for my time, period. Done. That's it. Because we're going to have a conversation and I'm going to give you some tips, whatever. Same thing with the proposal. Because I had both that I used to travel when I had the agency to people's location and business. And it would take me like sometimes an hour to two to get to a location. And then that's it. Nothing would happen. I also would have it when I would write this long proposals and I would actually see that people would copy them and start them either themselves or whatever. So the initiation of charging people was good, but the bad thing I used to do is that I was prematurely saying, and if you work with me, I'll use it towards your work. The question would still come up. What? Well, I never heard that. If they never heard that or they don't want to do it, then we're not meant to work together. That's what I would say at the end. But saying that I will use it towards future, that's already premature discounting. So if you tell someone, you do this, so that's premature discounting. And yes, we might still do it like, for like a marketing strategy kind of promotional thing. The idea here is for us to become very aware of when we're doing it because we're coming from like fear versus like, oh yeah, this is, I'm using it strategically. Does that make sense? And there's a difference. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. That way I don't lose my space because otherwise then I will. Okay, so what is financial trauma? So let's discuss the differences here between financial trauma and financial anxiety and financial stress. So the Financial Psychology Institute defines financial trauma as a lasting psychological and physiological response to distressing money related experiences. This is why I know that I've had financial trauma because I've had psychological and physiological. This is me personally. Like I explained to you about my problem with my gut and having this irritable bowel syndrome. Okay. This trauma is rooted in adverse events like childhood poverty, sudden financial loss, financial abuse, or chronic economic stability, of which I've had them all. And so I am very aware that financial trauma has played a massive part in my financial story. Financial trauma is an emotional, cognitive, and physical response to a financial event or series of events that creates a sense of fear, overwhelm, powerlessness, often resulting in a lasting impact on an individual's financial behaviors and belief. And that last part resonates a lot with my personal experience and definition of financial trauma, lasting impact. And this was actually from a research that came from Dr. Galen Buckwalter. What a name. Now, what is financial anxiety, which is slightly different? This is a psychological, psychosocial syndrome where individuals have or unhealthy attitude toward their financial situation. It is characterized by a deep-seated sense of worry, irritability, and foreboding regarding one's current or future financial state. Now, a lot of people who have financial anxiety, and sometimes you could have financial trauma and financial anxiety. I have. I have had it. Okay, so I totally understand it. Can you see the difference, Janet, as to the difference between financial trauma and financial anxiety? And what do you think for you are the two main differentiators of these two terms so far?
That's a good question. I think with the first one, you're saying it's more of a response to stress with
The
money.
first one is a response that kind of comes from a long journey of different events. So it could be from childhood, but also, for example, during the pandemic, I was working mostly with speakers that got paid to speak. And I've said this before. And When the pandemic happened, all venues, organizations that were paying speakers to speak cancel everything because we could not get together in person. So people lost all that. Some people really suffer a traumatic event because they went from maybe having 100,000, 30,000 a month to having nothing, like instantly, and then everything being canceled. And some people did force through attorneys because of this. They had this stipulation in their contract called uh, force something. I forget what it's
Force
called.
majeure.
Yeah,
Why I know that, I don't know.
yeah. That means that it was like an act of nature, whatever, and they were able to get to keep the deposits or whatever. But anyway, they probably suffer some financial trauma. Now, financial anxiety is a psychosocial syndrome. So it could happen whether or not you had a traumatic event like that, or being born into poverty like I was, or losing your business. Let's say none of that happened, but let's say that you listen to the news all the time and you listen to people, oh, we're in a recession, we're in an economic. So you're always irritable. You're always like, you don't know when everything's going to like fall apart. Or you're in a job and people say, oh, they're laying off people, and you haven't heard anything about you being laid off, but you get anxious and you start thinking you're going to get laid off. See, there's a difference. Okay. So it's important that we understand, because we want to be aware of what we are experiencing. That way we know how to better deal with that. Okay. So here I'm going to go into the last one. I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit. So Dr. Klontz, who is one of the people that I started following, who trademark money scripts, he defines a financial anxiety as persistent worry, fear, and apprehension about money. And this is the key word, disproportionate to your actual circumstance. So if you're like, no, I can't go out. I can't go out. I can't spend money, right? But you still have money, then you're coming from financial anxiety. Now let's talk about financial stress, which all of us experience, right? All of us experience financial stress. The process of experiencing emotional tension and physiological arousal in response to financial demands that exceeds one perceived resources. So, what does that mean to you? When might you or someone experience financial stress?
So you talked about like a health thing. So yeah, we had something this year too, and it's like they keep sending bills. It's like it's very random. We didn't know we were going to have all of those bills. I mean, it's not that we don't have the money, but it's like we didn't know we were going to be spending on this. And it's a very different method too
Yes.
of business than what most of us are used to. We're okay, we're just going to charge you for this, this, and this. And it's like, how do you
Yes.
deal with
So
that?
healthcare is like a great example, by the way. And there's a simpler example. So you have your car, you just finished paying it. Oh, so good, you don't have a monthly payment, right? And all of a sudden, what happens? So you get into an accident, and it happened to be that you can't prove that the bottom of the car, I don't know, the engine fell off, but the insurance that you've been paying for years, Geico, I'm saying a real story here, by the way, says no, that's not bodily problem. Your engine fell out. How is that possibly related to the accident that someone hit you? And then you try to recoup from the other person, but they didn't have insurance, so you're all messed up, right? So that's a stress. Or it could be um, an unplanned for expense, right? Like you are traveling, you're on vacation, you're having a great time, and all of a sudden you injure yourself, and now you're in a foreign country and you have to pay, let's just say the foreign country would be the United States because we have the worst healthcare system. So you have to pay. Or it could be that you all of a sudden have to leave, and now you bought that ticket that you can't change, and you have an option. you let go of the whole ticket or you pay the difference. So that may be stressful, right? So those are everyday samples. And that's why for the most part, many of us, if not all of us or most of us experience financial stress. So that's kind of normal, if you want to call it like that. So I created through the magic of AI this little infographic, if you will, that shows the difference: financial stress, financial anxiety, and financial trauma. I gave you examples here, but the part I want you to notice is the nervous system state alert, which is slightly different. So the nervous system and the financial stress is you are in doing mode, but feeling the strain. So you're kind of almost in autopilot. You're doing, because so many of us are doers, we're like robotic. The anxiety, your radar is always scanning for the next threat. So with the anxiety, for example, I can say the healthcare thing, I'm definitely anxious about that. Now, like next week I'm supposed to go for a doctor, and I'm already thinking I gotta call them because they haven't called me to tell me how much I have to pay, you know because the insurance that we have a big, what do you call that, the out-of-pocket expense,
Deductible.
deductible. So I like to know how much I'm going to pay, and I asked them when I book it to tell me, they'll call me. So because I've gone through so much stuff with the healthcare system, I feel that anxiety. So my radar is, I'm out looking for it, right? Same thing with financial trauma. The nervous system is hyper aware. So there's hyper arousal or freeze. You feel paralyzed or completely disconnected. So in financial trauma, you are even more hyper aware about money, lack of money, and your concerns are even way in advance. So you hit your toe and you're already thinking worst case scenario. Oh my God, how much is an operation for the toe going to cost me? Right? Because you're like hyper aware and there's hyper arousal. So stress is about the now. Anxiety is about tomorrow. Trauma is about the then still living in your body today. This is how you can plain and simple understand these three steps and what's happening. And it's important that we understand because all of them can be dealt with. And the latter two, anxiety specifically and trauma, have to be dealt with today because it will continue to exacerbate the anxiety and the stress. Does that make sense? So when we don't deal with the trauma, what we're actually doing is making the the uh, the anxiety and the stress greater. Now, what I want to do is really I want to invite you to, in your journal, or if you want to have a conversation here, we can have it. You to recall something that continues happening in your business that you have a response, one of these responses to. So I want you to choose something that continuously come up. For example, if it is when you're doing a sales presentation or giving a proposal, do you recognize any of these four F responses? Is it freeze? Is it flight? Is it fawn? Right? Which of these responses do you recognize that come up for you the most? That's the first thing. So let's think of a situation. Think of a situation in your mind. Let me know when you have it, that you're ready to share. Something that could happen to any business owner. That's why I like putting when it's time to ask for the sale, because this is one that can cause any of these. Okay? So which one do you have in mind? So we have fight, we have flight, we have freeze, or we have fawn. So one of those. Which one, let's say,
Okay, I'll go with freeze. It's, so if I feel like, okay, I haven't done that well, this month or whatever financially. So I feel like either A, can't invest in such and such program, or B, okay, like I want to get my hair done and I know it's going to cost 300 and whatever dollars. So I'll wait on that.
Okay, so where is that coming from? Where do you think that's coming from in terms of what we just, is it, do you think that comes from a place of something traumatic happening, something that has to do more with financial anxiety, or is it some financial stress?
Probably a little bit of each, but I think some of it is just from the past. Um, I can think of like during the Great Recession, I felt like a rug got pulled out from under me and I was left with, almost no clients, or somebody who'd become a client and then they when I used to accept checks, they canceled the check and didn't tell me. And then I had to pay fees for my bank. Um, so, that was like a period for me of, I mean, this was like 5 years or more. So it was really like constant. It was stress and anxiety. So, and it was kind of a sudden thing that happened. So I think that's kind of in all 3 categories, maybe. So that's, something that I guess I still, um, will maybe focus on that, as well as, okay, I actually have the money, but I wanna be making the money as in making it now, and I guess I feel insecure about money. I'm like, "Well, I need this money for the future," in case something happens. I've seen plenty of things with other people, family members or whatever, and, I'm certainly not gonna rely on Social Security. So,
I
so
think,
it's kinda like a big snowballing effect that is not good at all.
okay, so I'm not here to diagnose you, but we can have a conversation about it. And I'm going to point you to in my website at evds.com. When you visit evds.com and you look at the navigational toolbar at the top, you'll see that there is something that says free. And in there, you can actually take the financial trauma self assessment, and then we can schedule a time to speak privately, one on one, to see what exactly it is. Because if we go back to what we were talking about, um, financial trauma stems usually from, like, for example, I'll give you another example in my life. I was here by myself in South Florida, right? And in 2008, we had the financial crash that we had. And I was a real estate investor. And I had a mortgage company. And we had to close down. And I had, as employees, only my cousin and her mom. And then we had, 1099 mortgage brokers that used to work with us, right? Um, we had to close like this, like stuff happened, and we were literally closed out of our office. And I got so sick. I loaned my cousin $100,000 because then she was experiencing, she started, doing like I was doing and buying other real estate too. She wanted to be a real estate investor too. And so I loaned her that money. To this day, I have not seen that money. So that was very traumatic for me. A, because she was like a sister to me. She was my business partner. She was my roommate. And it was very traumatic. As a result of that, I ended up in the Aventura Hospital right near here. in 9 days in the intensive care unit, and I almost died of the stress that I had was so traumatic. We had to close, everything happened like in the period of a month. And I got out of there and I was already worried because we had already closed the business. We had no health insurance. And I got a bill for $250,000. Yeah. And that was a very traumatic thing for me. It's another reason why still dealing with healthcare stuff scared me because that was so scary. So that is a traumatic event that happened in my life, right? The thing that I express with my husband uh, did give me anxiety because as a result of not spending that money for him to have this procedure, I didn't share it on social media. Now it's here. We did have something happen to him, which really, really was scary because I thought I was going to lose him. But thank God it was taken care of. But had we had that procedure for him, so that is a sense of anxiety for me. Okay. Stress comes from, yeah, like we could set certain goals, intentions, we call them around here, financial intentions every month to manifest a certain amount of money. And being the last few days of the month, we can feel financially stressed, right? So all of these can be dealt through the process of the FAB money scripting and also a little bit of the financial trauma technique that I'll be introducing more and more to the ladies that come into my study as I develop it and have to prove that in my doctorate dissertation. But most of these things, for the most part, that we experience on a regular basis, I believe they are mostly financial anxiety and financial stress. Now, once you realize that you have any of these three, you want to start dealing with them, specifically the financial trauma, because that exacerbates everything else. But let's say you don't feel, even by what I'm just sharing, that you have financial trauma, which I'm not asking you to share here because we'll talk about it personally and privately. If you want to go into the study as I'm talking to you about it. So what happens with financial anxiety and financial stress? That is something that we can deal with it by establishing and practicing a new habit. And that new habit is, of course, my FAB money scripting method. Because here's what happens in terms of anxiety. So let's take the situation of having to tell someone after your sales presentation, this is how much it is, right? This is something that you have experienced that continues happening. Okay. That's also a way that I believe we can tell the distinction between trauma and anxiety. So it's not trauma, perhaps, because when you're doing a sales presentation, someone doesn't come off and say, I'm going to go to your house. I'm going to find you. And they end up in your house and they start like destroying your things. I dare you ask me to pay you for this. Or they'll start following you and calling you. They'll do social media posts saying negative things. That could be traumatic, right? That could be traumatic. And then you have a traumatic response out of that. This is just stuff that's coming to me right now, by the way. But that's not it. So it is anxiety because here's what happened. Why don't you tell me what happened? You do a proposal, you do a sales presentation, you have a one-on-one sales presentation. What's happening? Let's talk through it if you don't mind and if you want to. Let's talk through it.
Okay, so I have a sales presentation, you're saying, and I actually just did this yesterday, an existing newer client. So I started out by just doing some, we'll just call it remodeling of her existing website to get it to look decent so she can show it to people. We've been talking this whole time about a completely new not just a website, a CRM system. I know you know about Go High Level that does everything. And she's told me about all these problems she's been having with, because she has all these different pieces and it is just, a tangled web for her, and some of the things it's just gonna be easiest if she just literally lets go of them. So, at any rate, we talked, this was on Zoom, about her we touched on her various problems, and then I talked about the solution, which was more really my process of how it works, and it's something on my website, so we went through it together. And then at the end, it has, what it is and what it costs. And she didn't have any problem with the cost per se. It's just more what I'm going to call her own roadblock. She's like, I think that I want to do this down the line, but first I have to deal with this with my email issue and domain names and all this stuff, which is a huge mess. And just hearing about it gave me a headache. And well, I did give her some solutions to make it easier for it. And I will say she's a great person. She is a senior. I mean, she's 80 and looks like 60. But this is the thing that I found is one step at a time. You cannot push someone, in my opinion, at that
Well,
age who's given
yeah,
you
well, forget
given me the
about that because this
okay.
experience, let me ask you something. Have you had an experience like this with a different character? Forget about the character. We want to go into the experience of
Okay.
that may be causing anxiety, not just for you, but for most of us when we're getting into a sales conversation.
I've had in the past, yeah, and I wasn't actually didn't experience anxiety actually because I've been doing my journaling.
Good. So
But in
let's
the
talk
past
about, go ahead,
okay,
tell me
okay.
about the past. In the past?
The past, I've had people who threw up all kinds of roadblocks. "Well, first I gotta do this before my
Okay, so
website,
let me
and then I
stop
gotta
you
do
right
this,
there.
this, this, and
So
this."
let's
Okay,
start with the what we cover and I teach, and you will
okay.
learn should you decide to come on this journey with me. First of all, forget about the different characters that are going to go in front of you. The only thing that you can have some control is right here or right there for you. Your. So let's just say, for instance, this particular person that you just expressed. Before the call, what were you feeling?
I was feeling overall, I was actually feeling good about it because I could see possibilities, but I still did feel a little bit of just trying to think of as more stress or anxiety. Just I think a little bit of stress about it, but I can say less than in the past. In the past, it would be more like, "Oh, how are they gonna feel about the number? Will they go for it?" And I was a little more in the past focused on whether or not the person was going to decide, "Yes, I want this product." Usually it's a website, and if they were gonna go for it at that time. So, it was more in the past where I did feel stressed about that. Oh, and sometimes it's like, "Yeah, I really need to make this money, for this month or whatever." I will say this time I wasn't really feeling as stressed as I was in the past before the meeting. So, yeah, but like I said, previously I would feel stressed about all of those possibilities would be I'd be like juggling them in my head, which wasn't good.
Absolutely. So here would be my recommendation for all of us, and I've said it in the past. When we practice in advance by writing what we want to create in a sales call, okay? It not only helps with the actual process of sales and marketing for this call in terms of the strategic marketing of the call, it also helps with our nervous system. Did you know that?
Only recently because you've told me.
Yes. So what happens? This is good for anything. The thing is, we don't take out the time, right? So before doing any presentation, write about what you want to see happen. from the place of, first of all, feeling your highest, most aligned self as your financially free fatpreneur future self. Because you said something in the past, you worried about, what they're going to say about the money, or because you hadn't hit, and you, by you, I mean you, me, and anyone watching this, you haven't hit your monthly goals. We're already coming when we have that right here, or what we decided to call our money pest, because we haven't hit our goals and we're at the end of the month and we're in the last few days. We're coming from desperation. Where else are we coming from? From that point of view, where are we coming from?
Besides desperation?
Yeah, what other words would you use for that type of,
Well,
like,
I
where we're
think
coming from?
that's a good one, as well as just, not how do I say? Not really focusing on the other person, it's really just focusing on me and what I feel like I need, or what I don't, more like what I don't have right now.
From lack. We are
Okay.
coming from lack. So when we come from lack, if you believe in the law of attraction, and I don't particularly talk and say the law of attraction, but we know we're talking about the law of attraction, right? So if I come from lack, what am I going to project? Lack. So it's very important that before we get in a sales call, we are vibrating at the highest possible level. And of course, I do now have Dr. Hawkins' Scale of Consciousness copy from one of the books that I bought from him. But I'm going to bring it back because I think it's so important that we remember before we go into when I say a sales presentation, I mean either one-on-one or one-to-many, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to invite you, if you're watching this, to just look anywhere you want for the scale of consciousness or map of consciousness on Google. And that's what I did because I can't find the one that I actually got from his actual um, book, because I did make a copy, put it here from the download. Okay, so here's the power from Power versus Force, Dr. David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. So when we are coming from a lot of times fear in a sales call, well, let's name the fears. What are we fearful? What are the fear thoughts that's going through our mind, Janet, in a sales call?
Will they become a client? Will they want this, service that I'm offering? Will they want it now or later?
Exactly. And out of that fear response, we could have any of the four responses that we talked about, like that's like the fight. I've seen that happen when people have been trying to sell to me. Like I remember being in a sales call. I knew it was going to be a sales call and I was open to it. But the guy, he was like literally fighting me. And it was funny because I was so open and I knew there was going to be a salesperson and I was totally open. Actually, I was curious to see how much it was. And I was surprised that it wasn't that much. But what happened was the reason why I didn't go with him is because he was in that fight mode. Like he didn't want me asking him questions. He was getting upset that I was asking him questions. And that energy turned me off. So when we're in fear at that low vibration, we're at 100 according to the scale of consciousness, meaning we're calibrating, we're vibrating at a low energy. And that response could be to fight, right? That is going to put fear on the client, right? Same as the client, they're experiencing fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. They're experiencing all four. So let's say your client already knows you, right? And this is why we have to write in advance, and knowing this empowers us to be able even to be better at sales, even if we've never taken a sales training. Because here it is. Now you know that your clients are going to have one of these four responses, Janet. They're going to be in fear, flight, fight, or fawn. Wait, I missed one there. Yeah. Okay. So, or freeze instead of fear is freeze. So they've been your client before, right? They like you, they've hired you, right? But now, last time, which was 5 years ago, you charged them $1,000. So they're thinking in their mind, they're coming with a preconceived no, oh, it's going to be about $1,000, right? But you're telling them something else in a new system, and all of a sudden you're telling them it's 3,000. So they freeze. So we want to recognize where we're coming and where the client is coming from in that interchange. So what happens going back to how we're feeling, because we can only work with this as we're beginning to plan our sales call through using the FAB money scripting method. Grabbing your journal. How do you feel? You start with you first, and then you can work actually on how you want them to feel. And it actually helps you to prepare energetically, mentally, and strategically as far as how do you want them to feel. So you start with fear. How can you move from fear to pride in your presentation? Because fear is not a good place. It's 100, but pride is 175. So how could you, let's play it out. If you're feeling fearful, oh, they may say no, or they may have an objection is always good, as they say, because they want more. So you want to prepare for that in advance too. That's a strategic mindset thing that you have to do as far as sales and marketing goes. But let's get out of that part and just talk about how do we move from fear to pride in that situation? Like, what can you do for yourself to move yourself from being fearful to being feeling pride for your work?
While I'm actually in the meeting, or are you talking about preparing myself
Both.
before?
Tell me both. Tell me both.
Well, definitely sounds like preparing, and I do. I prepare before my meetings, but I like what you said about what I would want the client to feel like. What's their response? What's their feeling, and how I want to feel. Um, so that would be something.
So let me give you a for instance. If I'm feeling fearful that they're going to be saying no, and they may be saying no because I'm feeling fearful and because they're fearful. And I want to move to pride and I want them to have pride, right? I would say, well, I have pride. A, this is a past client that I did all this work, and maybe remind them, oh, maybe remind them, about the good work that you did, how satisfied you were, because they're already your client. If they're not your client, then I would bring testimonials. And we've heard this from sales and marketing experts telling us the power of testimonial, but I'm coming at you in a different perspective now. I'm coming at you about moving the energetic environment. So, both for yourself and for your client, you could recall what you've done for other clients. And that may mean, like, maybe for me, I may go to my Google reviews and read that. I may go to that email that I got today. You know, I may go to the testimonials that I receive. I may recall like one of my clients that is doing really well. And I just maybe write about that. Like, oh, I love this client because look what they've expressed. If, like me, I record all my sessions with my clients with their permission because they know that right now anything I do is either for my book, my thesis, or my doctorate degree. So I get permission from everybody to record them. And, or like in this case, we're recording to put in the community. So I may go and listen to that. So what can you do to give yourself, to move yourself from that fear to that pride or courage?
Well, the testimonials definitely help, and I have used that approach before. Um, I've been doing that more frequently, and, in the case of the client that I just mentioned, who was a recent one, she actually told me how she liked working with me and what I've done so far for her website. So I think that made both of us feel good. So I feel like it's a little different when it's someone who's newer, but it's still a thing of going from this amount to that amount of money.
Yes. Yes. And ultimately, through all the research that I've been doing, and I'm trying to really write it as good as I can and understand it so that I can speak about it, is this notion of neutrality. Oh, I'm not sharing this because I really feel, and I thought it was going to come out more in my master thesis, but I really was limited as to what I can share because, you're supposed to have one thing about what you prove. So I had to delete everything I was researching and writing about neutrality. So it'll probably go into my book because I'm not letting go of anything that I research. So this idea of neutrality, I think, is really big for us in sales. And that means you're okay, I'm okay. Whatever you decide, I'm okay with. I feel good either way. So how can we get there? I think for me personally, it's really practicing. And no better place to practice if you're married than in your marriage, I think. I mean, how can you practice being neutral? Because I really believe that if we practice being neutral, right, we could do better at sales. We practice being neutral. So that could be your homework in terms of when it comes to this idea of the sales presentation, whether it be one to many or one to one. What can I do today to practice being more neutral about things? Put it as a little game. How can you do that? Can you envision yourself doing that? How can we practice that being more neutral? How can we practice that?
I think like what you said with, someone you're married to, that can be a good way. And really just, I would say in everyday life, maybe it's somebody who says something, that's, we'll just say politically charged. I used to live in California, and this was, like, something that happened nonstop, and the thing that I did learn was just to, like, not say anything, whether I agreed with the person or not, because even if I did, they were gonna go on and on and on about it, and, I will say, since I'm on that tangent, there was a time where I just said to someone, "Let's stop talking we need to," I just let them know, "We need to stop talking about this," and they did
Yeah,
actually stop, and we talked about other things, so I was just really glad, and it was someone who was a friend that I hadn't seen in
yeah.
a while, but I was just, like, so glad that that is actually,
But
what
we don't
happened.
even have to go there. If you're watching or listening to a podcast or a TV show and someone says something that you disagree with, practice just, okay, let me just be with it. And this is easier said than done. Okay. I mean, I just had it yesterday again. And, whether it be politics or God or Christianity, these are like hard topics for us. I experienced this yesterday and I was just like, breathe. I'm just going to be like neutral about this. This is neutral. And it requires us really sometimes biting our tongue, but let's practice that because let's think about the bigger picture. By practicing neutrality, I think that it helps us to be better at sales because then we could say that we can move the scale of consciousness and move into that willingness, which, by the way, just like in therapy and in sessions, it's a good idea. And linguistics and salespeople tell you, and I teach in my community here to use certain words that get you off the hook and them, meaning releases the tension, makes your nervous system feel relaxed. So the word willing, so are you willing to listen to the possibilities of the solutions that I can provide? That could be a good question, right? And in your writing the morning before, ask yourself that question. Am I willing to openly listen to and hear out and be open? Like one day I was doing a presentation, which did not turn out all right for many reasons. But one of the things that I dared, because I was willing, I asked people because they were having reactions, and I can tell by their looks. Everybody was very engaged because I've been doing these workshop style, right? I was invited into, like, I'm going to be invited into your thing to do a talk. And I could feel people were very engaged until the moment that I offered, this is how we can move on. So then I was talking about this. So I said, I want you to feel right now, all of you, what are you feeling? Are you feeling resistant? Are you feeling fear? Okay. What are you feeling? And what are you feeling from me? Are you feeling that I'm coming at you from my heart, which is another way of saying love, that you may not want to say, but and ask people. And it requires a shift when we really talk about what we're feeling without being afraid. Because what happens, then you become more open and they become more open and the conversation ends more open. Does that make sense? So here's the
Yeah.
practice that I want to the financial trauma technique. We will experience it in a different container when we're either one on one, if you choose to go into my case study, or if you choose to become one of my clients in one of the programs, you'll experience this as a group, being that I don't offer one on one, or unless you want to pay a higher fee and you go into one on one coaching with me, which I also do offer. And what happens is that there you'll learn how to use this technique by using it first with me and then with yourself, by yourself. But it does require you go into a situation that may put you a little bit unease at first, but then you relax. And tomorrow, tonight, you could start taking about 8 minutes a day to start practicing in advance before you get into these situations. How do I feel now? Because you got to be truthful to yourself. And how do I want to feel? And what do I have to do to get me from where I feel I am discouraged, I am angry, I am fearful, or maybe you're apathetic? How do I go from feeling apathetic to feeling, oh, I love presenting, I love doing a sales presentation, oh, I love asking people to work with me because I love helping people? How do you get from here to there? Going back to the map of consciousness. Write about that. Then when you write about that through your feelings, that's step number one. Then you say, what are the aligned actions that I take as an as a financially free fabpreneur, or as my financially free fabpreneur future self now? In other words, if money was no object, but you're still in business because you love your business and you will do it forever, but now you're not worried that you haven't reached your goals at the end of the month. You have more than enough money because you're financially free, but you're still working because that's the way you have more than enough money. How would you, what aligned actions would you take? Right? And then in this moment, and when you're with that person doing that sales, how can I feel, act, and be my financially free fabpreneur future self in that instant, in that moment? Sometimes I've kid in presentations and I said, you've heard that saying that said, WWJD, what would Jesus do? Well, ask yourself, what would my financially free fabpreneur future self do? And do that. And practice writing it, because remember what we talked about last week. The brain doesn't know the difference between the here and now, doesn't know that we're practicing, and it doesn't know that you're in fact creating a new narrative for your subconscious mind. So practice that, and I promise you that you will be able to have a better sales call. Of course, for financial trauma, financial anxiety, or financial stress, if you are interested in exploring that and healing from it, make sure that you contact me directly at evie@evds.com, and then we can talk more about the financial trauma technique that I'm offering. I want to thank you for being here with me today. I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to record so that we can share. And I look forward to this journey because we're not alone. We're here together doing this journey together. So I thank you.